Right? No, that's why I got confused because everything you've been talking about isn't about freedom, it's about conditioning. Right, right. So we have freedom. No, I'm saying that if we said, if we thought of freedom the same way, right, as a process that, in a way, what you're saying is that there is some kind of conditioning that teachers think that they're doing freedom, that they're discussing freedom, that they're helping them lead the children to freedom. They're helping conditioning them. They're trying to teach them this is the problem. So what is approaching freedom then?
A condition.
No. What would it be to approach freedom?
Is there an approach to freedom?
Those are the kinds of questions. Yeah.
Create a safe environment or something.
Well,
Freedom
it
how?
wasn't default.
Creating a safe environment, maybe.
What does safety look like? What is a safe environment?
Yeah.
The safe environment is being up on the pinnacle there. And then once you get there, then you can begin to explore perhaps this freedom. So you're teaching them to stand in line, have the approach to get to there.
That's the opposite of safety.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, but that's
Yeah.
but that's what we think. I mean, the culture thinks.
Yeah, okay.
They don't understand it. They don't get to that.
That's the mistaken idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you approach freedom in a group setting?
Let's try it right now.
Well,
What'd you say?
freedom, truth is a pathless land. I mean, can you approach freedom? I mean, I feel about what freedom is. Can you, is that freedom?
What is freedom? And what?
Freedom is
I would think there would be many definitions.
Sorry?
I would think there would be many definitions to freedom, but everybody, I guess, has their own mindset of a definition of freedom. Like, you're free, you can do whatever you want. But I guess there's different levels of freedom, not necessarily like that.
So using the circle negation thing, can you say what freedom is not? Like, is freedom, I would say freedom is not just to have the ability to do whatever you want, or to speak whatever you want. It's freedom is this realm of thought that you can. Yeah, but now I wanted to see, can you connect it with what she said? Because one of the things she said is there's different definitions of freedom. So how does that connect with different definitions of freedom? By trying to sort of introduce the notion of, rather than making a positive affirmation of what freedom is, to sort of approach it negatively is the tool we've been offered. So I just want to know if that was connected. Does that make sense, that response, and in terms of what you're concerned? So what would that mean? What would approaching it negatively look like? Sorry, and then you had something to say too.
I don't know.
For me, it didn't connect, but because you're, like, you brought up freedom, which we weren't talking about before, and then nobody, are we looking at the word freedom in the same way? Is it psychological freedom, or freedom to get up and walk out of the room, or freedom to do whatever you want in your life? So just because we're here at this place, we might all assume we mean what Christian already meant. I don't know.
What do you feel free right now? What's stopping you from being free right now?
Well, I think now you're changing the subject.
Oh, okay.
Or not subject, but like jump to a different thing.
All right. You didn't feel safe? Never mind.
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I think to me, freedom is just to have no fear. What you're saying, if you just have no fear, you can. Of course, we're talking about not psychological freedom, just to have no boundary as far as what your conversation is. Just have an environment that people will lovingly listen to you without judging you, without telling you in their mind, well, that's not the right answer. Not having the right answer, or a kind of preconceived notion of what the right answer is, maybe is what freedom is.
So I just wanted to draw, because there was a kind of discussion here about, the safety and loving and so on. I want to share with you this real sense of concern and worry that I have
that our version of safety is often really a fear-based version of safety, especially in school and elementary school classroom settings. So one of the things, by the way, sorry, I didn't get your name. What's it?
Brittany.
Brittany. One of the things Brittany brought up, suppose she says to me, I'm not good at mathematics. And I say to her, I don't want her to feel afraid, I don't want her to feel judged. I say to her in a caring, compassionate way, that's all right, you don't have to do mathematics because academics may not be your thing. On the face of it, that seems to be a response that creates a safe environment. But my worry is, it's not safe to challenge that because I'm really afraid to say, for example, one of my responses would be, I don't care whether you're good or bad at mathematics. I really want to figure out what you were thinking. Because I care about what your thinking is, mathematical thinking is. But on the face of it, it doesn't seem like safety, it doesn't seem like care, it doesn't seem like compassion on the face of it. My worry is a notion of safety that becomes, it's okay for you to have these kinds of judgments, which we really have gathered from school, from childhood, really strong judgments about our abilities. And safe means that's not open to challenge. And my worry is it does a real disservice to learning and to the student and to myself. I don't have an answer, but I'm just saying, so what does safety look like?
So you're saying the notion of safety itself is something that we already know what is safe. So we should break that notion as well. So what is safety? Like if I feel good, that means that's a safe place. But you're saying break that too, right? Is that what you're saying? Like
Yeah. And now let's open it up to
I was
each
just
other.
gonna say to what you just said, it seems to me like if I were to say, if Brittany was my student and I said, and she said, I'm not good at math, I guess the first thing I would ask is, why do you think that? Or what's leading you to that conclusion, right? And then there would be probably some story about some teacher in the past or whatever. So I guess what I would say safety means is not feeling good, but sort of an environment that I was gonna say encourage, but at least like in a sort of a fun way, makes room for wandering down paths that you might pull back from. So, for example, like in art education, you sort of you have to go down so-called wrong roads, or else you're never challenging yourself, right? You're always just repeating yourself. But that means that somebody else might say, you just spent 2 hours on something that you're not going to do. Like that's a waste of time. But so if we can build that into the class, that feels like safety. Which that's easy to say, but sometimes it's hard to do. Like practical considerations, like she was saying, students might say, oh God, not that again, like the wrong answer, we're gonna explore the wrong answer again. So it's easy to say. But that to me, I guess is safety, as we say, we build in time for this activity, like it's inherently beneficial. But it could be sort of challenging. That was what it was.
I think what you said, Paul, is that when you said, I would invite, it doesn't matter what your answer is, I really want to find out what your thinking is. Right away in my core, I felt like, oh my God, this teacher wants to connect to who I really am. And it's beyond safety, it's connection. It's way beyond safety, it's connection, it's caring, it's not in most people's lives. Parents don't even do that with their children. So for a teacher to do that, and then explore it with the classroom to say, does anybody else here see that 6 is odd and even? And what does it feel like to you? To dialogue about that and getting the students, then there's no wrongness with the student at all. There's an exploration and a connection, a deep connection. It's almost spiritual.
Connection with what? And then connection with what?
Connection with what?
Connection with who I might be as I'm expressing myself of saying 6 is odd and even.
It's allowing yourself to be yourself.
Yeah, I'm seeing something as odd and even, And
So you're exploring yourself.
I'm exploring, I'm always exploring myself. At 52, I'm still exploring myself because I'm the truth and I'm a pathless land and it's expansion all the time. I'm dynamic and ecstatic, ever changing all the time. My consciousness is expanding. So for a teacher to say to me, well, that's an interesting answer. And you're not saying it's right or wrong. I'm curious about how you came to that. What's your thinking on that? What's your feeling on that? So now you're engaging right left in his brain.
Okay, I'm going, just one concern I'll raise there.
Yeah.
And I'll try and open it up as a question. So, just as the worry about safety, here is another worry or concern. I interact quite a lot, I think discussed this with Jeff, with this child, Maxwell, friend of child of some friends, and he's a friend and teacher too, Maxwell. He's a 2-year-old. Initially, times we'd see him, he'd be really excited to make a kind of personal connection, right? So there was a lot of playing and so on, so he'd really get really excited. One of the things he did was very interesting, was he'd see us, my wife and myself, and he'd kind of go, oh, oh, and get really, and smile, and say, what's that? It would be to go and explore the world. It wasn't so much, the sense wasn't so much, here we are separate individuals, we're going to really connect in some psychological sense between the real you and the real me, and then it so happens that then the world will fall into place. In fact, this sense of connection between us was taken for granted, and what it was now, we have the common ground to explore the world of language, of what's going on, of mathematics included. So what I'm worried about is if it's just a connection of relationship between psychological, a kind of psychologized connection, sort of an I and a thou, but without a connection with the world of our engagements, then again it leaves this sort of really emaciated, it's only connection in terms of human relationships. And it's not this connection to the whole outer world. And in fact, there's some really interesting, if I render that kind of connection between individuals, I've seen children try to connect with him. So come, what's your name? There's no connection. How are you today? What's your name, Maxwell? Oh, that's so cute. How any kind of question, I've tried that kind of connection as well. But what it assumes then is I'm assuming kind of fragmentation from him. We're separate individuals.
He's already
We need to connect. He's connected.
Exactly.
So that's my worry. So that's more, I think, raising that question of connected to what. And my worry is that our rendition of connection becomes this atomized individuals disconnected from the world. So I'm just sharing that kind of worry, right?
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. It's actually very profound. I want to make sure that, so when you kind of ask that question, you are disconnected yourself. And you're
assuming that she's
assuming that you want to connect with the child, with the person, but the person already is connected. Your question is kind of a,
You're trying to.
I'm trying to
connect. Yeah.
Well, and it's like a reduction, it feels like a reduction.
Right.
As you were speaking, the thing that struck me was, it was like I was with what you, the ways that you were acknowledging it until we got to a point and thought, well, the freedom, or the feeling was that the freedom and inquiring and really seeking to understand where you're coming from is that we're opening up this wonder space of discovery, and it frees any need that I might have been attached to from that attachment. Right. Somehow that shared inquiry liberated some attachment that I might have been holding.
In asking that way, he's teaching the value of clear observation. You know, how do you think? Then the child can. That's
sorry,
the thing
who's
that we're
teaching? Who's teaching?
You, by asking her, I'm interested in how you're thinking about it. Then you're teaching her the value of clear observation.
We're not talking about the 2 years old.
Or at least your
No,
No, but even the 2-year-old and even her,
Aren't they teaching each other?
Well,
I am interested in your thinking. Who's doing the teaching? If I mean it,
you create the space to say, what's important here is clear observation. Then you're creating, as a teacher, the space to clearly observe and not be good or bad or anything. You're just reminding that it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 6 or odd or even, let's learn to observe.
It's interesting because it feels like the practice of asking in that way releases the teacher to be a dynamic, more of a dynamism of
A facilitator.
well, it's like it moves. The teacher isn't the person. It's transitional.
It's the way, it's a teacher-student simultaneous relationship.
Well, he steps out of it, but he creates a space.
Or does he?
In the beginning, maybe.
Yeah, it sets it.
After a while?
After a while, it becomes, this is the tool that I learned before. I've been asked this whether I feel it or not. What did you mean when you said that? So there's always,
So
keep moving with this, right?
but in that version, something hasn't got changed, which is I'm still the teacher. So even that word facilitator, now nobody, I mean, in progressive education in these schools, very few people would say I'm the teacher.
Right.
Would say I'm the facilitator, as though it's using a different word has changed something.
Right.
But I'm facilitating, but still what hasn't got changed is even when I say I'm interested in your thinking, what hasn't got changed, and that's why I think that as you were explaining the who's teaching whom, it kind of started getting blurred.
Yeah.
What hasn't changed in that is I am still the teacher, but if I really mean that I'm interested, and I'm not just saying it as a kind of, oh yeah, I'm supposed to show that I really don't know that 6 is already even, so I'm learning with you and I'm a facilitator. But if I'm really interested in your thinking, it's consequential because you've got to be teaching me. That's the only way that's real.
Got to be what?
You've got to be teaching me as well.
Students got to be
Be
teaching.
teaching me. Otherwise, it's just a kind of gimmick.
Right, so but
When you're
what
teaching
about-
the person to connect with their core and tell them that you are your own teacher. You know, the observation is the teacher. So you're, just like you don't want the student to be following you, you say, oh, look at me. The answers are within you.
Right.
And the value is in the observation. And then you can step away. And then they're kind of free to begin, being at the top to explore freedom.
But aren't you also, there's a ping pong here, because we're with you, it feels like what you just said, it sounds like you're saying that you sort of passed the ball and there was no actual genuine curiosity and interest. Okay.
No, but by asking in that way, he's bringing it not to,
Pass it on.
oh, it's okay, you don't really need that.
Yeah.
I agree, you're to complete the service because it just closes them down.
Right.
But by asking them, let's explore the thinking, then that becomes of utmost importance. And
Right.
they can say, oh, wait, I can do that. I can look at that.
And challenge to what
Yeah,
you
just,
said.
just one other thing I want to clarify because we really sort of weigh on the you're not good at math part, but the damage of you're really good at math, you're the gifted student, that's not so obvious. But the kind of pressure, you must be really gifted, Tom. You went to some Ivy League school, so you must be really good at math. What a cross to bear.
Right.
And it's not even apparent. Because it would be very unlikely he will take risks to then actually display thinking of his that's confused, chaotic. Because you have to constantly come through as somebody who's successful, who's articulate, who's clear, who's got to the destination.
Yeah, I think Marshall Rosenberg says his idea of hell is to tell somebody that there is such a thing as a good parent.
Let me ask you a question. So if you were to say, I'm kind of trying to play on what you said a little bit. If you were to say, listen, we're going to go out into the Oak Grove, and I just let's just explore for a while, and you really don't have an agenda, right? You really say, well, let's just really explore the Oak Grove for a while. So you're out there for an hour, hour and a half, or whatever, and then come back. What did you see? You know, you just ask questions like that, and then the students are going to say all these amazing things for sure. My question is, or my curiosity is about the teacher. You could say the students are teaching you if you're really in a space to be that, to be taught, right? I totally get that. And the teacher is the one who said, let's go out into the Oak Grove and do this, right? So even to use your calculus example, like you're on the pedestal, if you've done math for a long time, you at least know, you've had the hard work experience of saying, here are some of the issues back and forth, right? Now, of course, that can limit your thinking, there's more that you don't know. But I guess what I'm wondering about is, you could say, oh, you know, the student is teaching the teacher, if the teacher sets that environment up internally and externally. There has to be a role for the teacher in making some choices, right? I don't see how a classroom could be, okay guys, I mean, I'm gonna play on what you said. The answer's inside of you, go for it. And then you sit back. I still see how that doesn't seem, and that wasn't what you